Kiera Tauro. Welcome back to our session on day two for our Open Access Community Day. My name's Anton. I've been the facilitator for the conference this year, and we're enjoying it. If anyone is interested in hosting the Institutional Repository Community Days for next year, you'll have to fight Lisa Chisholm down at Otago to do that. They've put their hands up to do that, which is lovely. But we'll probably discuss that on the various mailing lists and community boards that we have. But our last session today is talking about, I thought we'd have a kind of a round robin lightning talk thing on various open access initiatives in New Zealand. The first person to speak today is Kiera Tauro from the University of Canterbury. Kiera is one of the education subject librarians at the University of Canterbury, and she's interested in academic publishing, scholarly impact, and the ways that open access can improve access to research. And I have been watching her and admiring her work in this particular project and how much she's put into this. So very interested to hear a report back about that. Thank you, Kiera.
Good, everyone. Well, thank you, Anton, very much for having me and for everyone coming to listen. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about a project that we've just recently wrapped up here at the University of Canterbury, all about, promoting open access. So how did we get started with this project? It actually kind of started, or the idea for it kind of started at the beginning or at the end of last year. So in the beginning of December, we received an email from Taylor and Francis that included a spreadsheet of journal articles. And they very kindly said to us, here is all of the journal articles that you have published with us that are eligible to be made open access if you would like to pay us an article processing charge. So we took a look at this spreadsheet and noticed that lots of the journals in it were published from around 2022 and earlier. And we had the thought that, hey, maybe rather than paying Taylor and Francis all of this money for article processing charges, what we should do instead is see if there's any way we can get these articles made green open access. So on the off chance that anyone isn't familiar with green open access, it's basically open access where your journal article or your book chapter or your book or anything like that is published in an institutional repository or another repository somewhere free online. So we thought that this list might actually be a really excellent starting point because we had a list of articles that we knew were published by our academics. We knew they were the first authors on these papers, and we knew that most of them would be eligible because of the age of the papers to automatically go into the research repository. So we thought, hey, this is a great chance to get in touch with people and let them know about green open access. And then we thought, well, if we're going to be emailing people about open access stuff anyways, maybe what we should do is make this into a bit of a wider kind of education campaign about the benefits of open access in general. However, it having been December when we got this email, we kind of figured that this probably wasn't the ideal time to kick this off. Lots of our academics go away for all of December and January. And then when they come back, kind of end of January, beginning of February, everyone is getting really, really into gear for semester one, teaching, and all of that. And so are we as a subject librarian team who are the ones who are going to undertake this project. So we kind of put it on the back burner for a little bit, knew we wanted to do it. And come July of this year, we thought, great, this is a good time. Let's kind of get this project underway. So the goal was to have everything ready for study break in the middle of semester two, because we figured that would be a good time to get in touch with lecturers. They would have time to potentially to deal with this sort of stuff or to reach out to us. Probably one of the good times where it's not super, super busy and everyone should still be around. So between July and kind of that term break time, what we decided to do was basically get all of our ducks in a row. So we made some marketing collateral, which you can see here on this slide. So our fabulous library marketing team created these two posters that you can see here. We also made the publishing open access brochure that you can see at the bottom. So the posters went up all around campus. Subject librarians put them kind of around campuses or around the different faculties and stuff like that, where we knew people would see them. They were in the libraries. The brochure was made, it's at the front desk of the libraries as well, but it was more made as something that we could bring along with us when we were talking to academics. So they had kind of something physical that they could look at and remember all of the things we were trying to tell them. We also did some staff upskilling. So all of our subject librarian team is super amazing and super competent and wonderful, but lots of them don't do the sort of publishing and open access stuff on a day-to-day basis. So while everyone sort of had a base level of knowledge, since we were going to be sending emails to everyone saying, hey, make appointments with us, bring us to your department meetings, we wanted to make sure that everyone knew exactly what it was we were talking about, where all the resources that we have were, and just get everyone kind of feeling a bit more confident. We also created a series of email templates so that when we did email academics, we were making sure that one, we were sending out a cohesive message, so everyone was getting the same sort of information and the same sort of offers, but two, also just to lighten the workload a little, because we knew if we said, hey, can you send everyone an email about all of this open access stuff, it's actually quite a lot of work to put all that together. So we wanted to make it easy as possible for everyone to do that. So what did we actually do? So we sent out a total of 702 emails to academic staff offering open access support. So this looked different depending on who was sending out the emails. You can see the top email on the right-hand side there. That was sent from myself and my colleague Catherine, who are the education subject librarians. We chose the kind of BCC route where we sent out one email to all of the education staff members. So they each got it individually, but it wasn't necessarily personalized to each one. Whereas I know some of my other colleagues with smaller departments did actually send out emails individually to each staff member. So, but that was the sort of template email there at the top that we sent out for those initial big burst emails. So everybody and all the faculties got that first email. Additionally, we emailed 115 staff members with articles that were on that Taylor and Francis list that I talked about earlier. So you can see an example of what that email looks like, again, on the right-hand side underneath. So what we did was we tried to make things as easy as possible for people. So we said, we have this list. We told them which of their articles were on the list. Some people had 1, some people had 2, some people had as many as 10. We basically just said, hey, we need the author-accepted manuscript of the article. And we said you can either upload it to Elements, which is our system that's linked to the repository yourself, or just send it to us and we will do everything else. Our amazing access and collections teams does things like they check the copyright status, they make sure it's the right version. We make sure that it's out of the embargo period. So we told the academics, don't worry about anything like that. If you can just get us the version of the article, we'll do all the work. So, and then we also included, this is part of our open access project. Here's the other things that we have. So when we went to talk to academics, what did we actually talk to them about? And what sort of things were we promoting? So we wanted to promote publishing using our prepaid open access agreements and talk to them a little bit about how annual caps operate, because as we were sending these out in kind of the end of August, beginning of September, this is when some of our agreements that we have were starting to reach caps. So it was a really good opportunity to kind of educate people about those. But yes, the library here at Canterbury has a number of really, really good open access initiatives. And while they're starting to gain a lot of momentum, there's still people who we're finding saying, oh, I didn't know you had this. So yeah, these are the things that we wanted to push. So these prepaid open access agreements, we have the subject guide page here. So we're part of the call agreement. So we have subscriptions, or not subscriptions, but we have agreements through call as well as individual ones. And what we've done is we've tried to make it easy as possible for people to find out which articles are included. You can see on the right-hand side here, I have a screenshot of our open access agreements page. 2 things that we've tried to highlight to people is we've created a list at the top here that you can see of Scopus index journals and prepaid agreements. So we've created this both as a way for one, people can do a quick check to see if the journal article they're thinking of publishing in is in an agreement and a journal that's in Scopus, and 2 is a bit of a discovery tool. So you see, I'm sure a lot of other universities do have a vested interest in having their academics publish in Scopus index journals, namely because these are the ones that are used for the rankings, so Times Higher Education and QS. So academics can also use this spreadsheet as a little bit of a discovery tool. There's the Scopus ASJC codes embedded in the document. So academics can look up the ASJC code for their particular subject area and see which journals are, one, indexed in Scopus, and two, included in our prepaid agreements. So they know that anything they find on this list will be, a good Scopus place to publish, and they can publish open access there for free. We also wanted to talk about publishing in the Library Open Access Fund. So this is a fund that we have specifically for people who want to publish ideally in a gold open access journal, so we can cover the article processing charges for them. We try to prefer candidates who are early career researchers or postgraduate students, because we know they are the least likely to have access to funding. So we have this avenue as well for people. We also wanted to let people know about adopting, adapting, or creating open textbooks, and that we have support for this in terms of, we have one of my colleagues, Rachel, has a full-time position around specifically helping these sorts of initiatives, as well as a fund available for that sort of thing as well. And while we were here talking about open access, we thought we would also talk a little bit about kind of like good research hygiene in terms of creating, updating, and consolidating things like ORCID and Scopus IDs, and also analyzing research impact, because we know that one of the best ways of creating research impact and getting more citations is by having your articles open access. So we figured we'd tie the two together and talk a little bit about research impact as well. And you can see on the right-hand side here, we have tabs available at the top of our subject guide for each of these things. So we were able to link to those and show people where all this stuff is available. So how did the project actually go? In my mind, it went really, really well. It was actually really encouraging to see how many responses we did get. So we were invited to 8 faculty, departmental, or research group meetings, some of which are still happening. So I'm going to an engineering faculty meeting tomorrow, in fact, to talk about this sort of stuff, as well as 11 individual appointments with academics. The subject guide, the one that I was just had on the previous screen, the usage increased over the project duration, and it ended up with double the hits from the same period in 2023. We also had over 50 articles uploaded to Elements from the Taylor and Francis list that are ready to go to the UC Research Repository. And those over 50 are just the ones that were sent specifically to a member of the team for us to kind of upload through that process. We're waiting on final stats for exactly how many total that we got. But yeah, we got over 50 just sent to us, which is incredible. So where do we go from here? So we want to do some further targeted work related to moving articles to green open access. So what we've done is we've gone into SciBalks for us, which is, just kind of a layer on top of Scopus that you can purchase. So we've gone into there and we've downloaded a list of all journal articles published by University of Canterbury staff who were the first author from 2014 to 2023. And we've pulled out the ones that are published by Taylor and Francis, because obviously we've overcovered those. We've taken out the ones that are already open access or available on a repository somewhere else. And we now have a nice, tidy list of about 600 articles that we think are going to be eligible to be added to the UC Research Repository. So we can now, over the next few months, look at targeting specific academics with lists of articles and say, hey, if you're interested, these ones are available to be made green. So we're going to look at doing that. We're also going to do some annual refreshers for library staff around open access and publishing, just because that was something that a few of our team members indicated that would be really helpful, just so they know all the latest trends and what's going on and what new things we have available, and so they can communicate that easily to their academics. We also want to review our open access reporting. So we want to make sure that we have kind of good data. We know what's going on. We know what we're doing. We know kind of how, citation levels and stuff like that are going. Just because you have good data can make good decisions. And lastly, we just want to review the process for academics to add articles to the UC Research Repository, make sure it's working well for them, make sure it's working well for us, and that we can handle all of these articles that we are hoping to get. So yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kiera. This is the good bread and butter work that we as librarians do to get things in. I was just doing a little calculation in my head. If the APCs for each of those articles, those 50 articles, was $1,000, that's $50,000 we've saved in APCs by using the repository, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So that's really cool. Does anyone have any questions for Kiera? Cool. Well, if anything crops up, please don't hesitate to put it in the chat. Next up, we have our next presenter, who's Berit, who's going to be talking about the OA Toolkit. Are you ready to, have you got slides to share?
I do, yep.
You help yourself.
Thank you very much. Can you see my slides?
Yet?
Not yet?
Not yet, Berit.
Okay. Hang on.
One moment, Corner.
Oh, I love it. I love it when it goes like that. It's so good.
It was you today. It was me yesterday. Don't you worry.
How about now?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, kia ora tātou. Ko Berit Anderson tōku ingoa. I'm a team leader with Ngā Rātonga Manaki Rangahau o Te Tumuherenga, Waipapa Tōmataro, Research Services, Libraries and Learning Services, University of Auckland. And Rachel, who was very kind to tell me that my slides weren't working, was my project co-lead for this project. And I also know that I have seen a few other of our usual suspects from this project on the call. So that's Rachel Doherty is around, Koichi is around in this call, Donna and Lisa. And if anybody else has come in at the last minute, I'm really sorry I didn't see you. But I know that we have really good representation from our project team here today. So thank you all for coming along. And hopefully you all can help me field the questions at the end if there are any. So we're a project team consisting of 10 people from across all the New Zealand universities. We had project oversight from Kim Tairi, who's the university librarian from AUT, and Michelle Blake, university librarian from Waikato. We were sponsored by University of Auckland and Universities New Zealand, and our project ran from May 2023 until February 2024. So we have officially wrapped and launched this project. What did we do? We collectively designed and made an infographic guide to publishing open access with specifically an Aotearoa New Zealand context and perspective. After much discussion, we created digital templates. What this means is that other institutions can customize our core resource, and this includes infographic versions as well as accessible Word template versions that can be screen reader read. Our infographic guide is openly available under a CC BY SA license on the Open Access Australasia website. So our infographic guide covered what we saw as the 5 stages of publishing, which were planning your research, selecting a journal, submitting your manuscript, what happens on acceptance, and what you need to do or think about after publication. And it looks like this. So on the left, you can see this is a complete version, and on the right, you can see what the template version looks like. So very similar. If you are interested in going in and creating your own version of this toolkit, you click on the template version, and you can see everything highlighted in red is basically a placeholder. So we are guiding you through the links that you would need to include if you are at an institution and you have support services to do these things. So links to your help request services, your email. If you have funding options available, there's places to slot that in. And each stage is split into these 3 pieces. So the top is kind of a general overview of things that you need to consider before or at this stage. Tips and tricks collected from the brains of the entire ropu of 10 research librarians. You know, we love to give a bit of advice, so we couldn't really help ourselves and had to include that section. And then there's a simple checklist on the bottom right of things that you we'll probably need to consider before moving on to the next stage of publishing. So there was a point where we considered in this project creating like an online series of modules about the different stages or about the different aspects of open access. But what we found is everyone had the resources to support that, but what was missing was kind of the map to putting it all together about what you needed to think about and when. So we decided to leave the modules as they were with each university and actually use our project time to create the guide from beginning to end and offering options to each institution to insert their own support resources into the map itself. So that's where we ended up. I believe it's now the second most viewed page or resource on Open Access Australasia since its launch in February, which is pretty cool. Very proud of that. Here are some examples of other institutions. So institutions who have taken the template and turned it into their own. On the left, you can see the University of Waikato's version. Beautiful. I love their color design. They've kept some of the graphics. But they just wanted to kind of put their own spin on it. So basically the content is the same, but they made it look quite different and quite unique to their own color and context. On the right, you can see Charles Sturt University has taken the template itself because they're Australian. They have taken out all of the New Zealand birds, but that's totally fine, you know? So the idea with creating a template was the content is there, but you can turn it into whatever you like, however you'd like it to look, or adapt it however you like as well. So I'd love to see more versions of this. So if you've created one, please let me know. I love to look and see what people are doing with it. How did we do what we did? We collaborated remotely, basically. So we were very reliant on cloud-based technologies. So we used Miro, which is like an online whiteboard space to collaborate and plan the project in real time. And we used Canva to design the actual toolkit itself. We chose Canva because it was cloud-based. We could work remotely, but simultaneously in that system. And Canva also allows you to create basically a template and share a template. So someone can open that template form and then adapt it to suit their context, which is what we ultimately decided to do with this project. As part of this project, we collectively audited, reviewed, and critiqued all of our own individual resources, which let us assess where everyone was at and kind of get on the same page about where we needed to go and what was missing. And the same thing happened when we identified our own knowledge and resource gaps. And I'll show you a little bit what that looked like on the next slide. We did have some limitations that meant, I think originally, you know, we couldn't do what the original thought was, which was maybe doing an online course with lots of interactivity for this resource. We couldn't do that because all of our university systems were on different platforms and systems, and that meant we were quite limited in terms of interactivity and coding and that kind of thing. Everyone also had very different levels of capacity for how much time they were able to contribute to the project. So we wanted to make sure that we offered everybody the opportunity to engage in this as much or as little as they were able. And the other limitation that we had across the board that everyone knows very well is that researchers are incredibly time poor. So we really wanted to design a resource that was pretty much pick up and go, wasn't a huge time sink for researchers, and really needed to be basically point of reference and point of need. So a printable, you know, poster that you could look at any point in time, depending on where you are in the process, fit that bill really beautifully. So this is what a snapshot of our Miro board looked like. So when I say we were collaborating in real time, we met, I think it was every 2 weeks or maybe 2 weeks, 2 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on where we were in the project. And we started off with a lot of environmental scanning, which was a little bit frustrating for some people, but actually ended up being really foundational to the success of the project, because what it meant is that we took the time to figure out where everyone was at and what was missing. So you can see each Post-it note is color-coded to university, and then as more people had the same issues, I added tags on to those Post-it notes to show that that was an issue that was represented across multiple universities. And then wasn't organized like this at the time. At the time, everyone was just adding thoughts and ideas up onto the board, and then at the conclusion of that meeting, we would go away, and I would take a look at this board and kind of pull out themes and kind of do the assessment out of time and then report back to the group. And then we could use this to inform our decisions and how we wanted to move forward collectively. So you can see here, this is a section from doing some environmental scanning about what knowledge gaps everybody was dealing with and what kind of questions your teams get most frequently. You can see here most people had policy and compliance questions, what kind of journals to select, how to use read and publish agreements, everything about CC licenses and author rights, different types of open access and repository use. So these were common themes across the board that everybody was getting questions about, and we knew that we needed to address this in our project and in our resource. So all of this information, and there are lots and lots of these types of questions that we collaborated on in our meetings in real time to make sure that what we were doing was meeting most of the information needs, but was also leaving enough space for people to adapt to their own context where necessary. It was really fun to work in Miro. That platform worked really well for us collectively. So another example of what we did on Miro, at the end of the project, we did a wrap-up retrospective hui, where we talked about what worked really well in our project. And these are the main themes that came across. So everyone was a fan of Miro, basically. That worked really well. The Canva was very successful as well. Creating it as a template that could then be shared and adapted by anyone into their own context was excellent. One of the things that kind of came across very clearly was that having a designated project lead was crucial to the success of this project, who was actually had time and capacity to keep the project moving forward, even if some of the project team had a lot of things on. Having somebody set aside and sponsored by Universities of New Zealand was a really important part of keeping this project moving forward and actually delivering a thing at the end of the time. The meetings worked really well. What we did was we assigned tasks for people to do outside of meeting time and then to bring their learnings, and then really using the time that we had in person to collaborate, to put all our ideas in one place, and then I would go away and do themes extraction so that by the time we had the next meeting, we were ready to do the next piece. Roles and capacity, the way that we kind of handled people having different availability and time to work on this project. We offered them a choice of being more on the review side of things, or being more on the creation side of things. So those who had more time, capacity, and interest to be involved in the nuts and bolts creation of the toolkit itself. So in Canva, doing the design, graphic design, kind of mapping and laying things out. Those people volunteered to be on the creation side of things. And then our project team members who didn't really have enough time and capacity said, cool, I'll be more than happy to take a look at this, to give you some feedback, but that was a much lower investment in terms of time. So still really important. We really need to have our work checked and to be looked over by all the brains in the room. But it just meant that everyone was able to engage in this project in a way that fit in with their day jobs, essentially. So at the conclusion of the project, we fed some some future recommendations back to our sponsors. We ideally in future would like to have greater Māori and Pacific representation on future project teams across the board. This is something that's really important. Multiple perspectives. The more perspectives you can get from this space, the more valuable your resources will be. But that, again, you're limited on availability on staff time. So it's trying to skate that line between getting enough feedback and having the perspectives that you require in line, and also being mindful of their other responsibilities as well. We recommended that Universities of New Zealand look into creating an accurate dashboard to track progress toward the 70% open by 2025 goal that Universities of New Zealand set in their statement. I believe that was beginning of last year. I know that there is a dashboard now that Tom Saunders is running. He wrote the report for Dame Juliet Gerard beginning of last year. The Future is Open. If you haven't read that, it's really interesting. I know that he's created a dashboard. I'm going to tap on Rachel because I know that Rachel could find a link to that really quickly. Can you pop that in the chat, please, Rachel?
Yep. I'm just trying to find my bookmark.
Thank you.
It's here somewhere.
You can also pop a link into the toolkit itself on Open Access Australasia. I was going to pop that in, but I forgot because I was talking.
I've done that for you already.
Oh, you were so good. Thank you. So Tom's got a dashboard up and running. It's very effective for what it does, but there's a lot of discussion around kind of what data are sitting behind that dashboard. So that's a work in progress, but currently working really well, but could always be refined. But we're really grateful to Tom for taking the time and effort to set that up. We also recommended that Universities New Zealand work toward creating a list of local Diamond Open Access journals. That was raised. And we looked into doing that as part of this project as well as kind of an offshoot, but it turned out we didn't have time, we didn't have capacity, and there was some murmurings about having this piece of work already starting to be undertaken by somebody at Waikato. So we added that into the recommendations, and I know that there's some chatter going on across the board about a Diamond Open Access platform as well. So interested, there's a lot of movement and kind of discussion happening in this place. In this space, so we're keeping an interested eye on that. And then the last thing was for Universities New Zealand to sponsor an annual project, a similar project with a designated project lead, if possible. We would love it, on similar high impact topics such as research data management, Māori data sovereignty, author rights retention, OERs, and then open access for non-traditional research outputs. So these were some of the big things that came up where we're like, well, actually, these topics could do very well with some more support resources of similar ilk in future. If possible, please, we want more. So those were our key recommendations. Overall, it was a really amazing, really fun, rewarding project to be part of. And it's been really cool since February, the launch of this toolkit, to watch it kind of gain legs and to see the different types of things that people are doing with the templates that we created. So that is what we got up to. And I'm more than happy to take questions if you have them.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I didn't introduce you properly at the start of this. I'm very
Oh, that's all
tired.
right.
I've had a hard couple of days. So my apologies for that.
That's all right.
Em put in an appreciation for you. Absolute Method, thank you for making it available under Thesi by FA. Truly an exemplar of openness and collegiality. And sitting next to Rachel as you were doing this work and hearing her talk about exactly that, you've produced something with very, very high production values that's very reusable and very thoughtful. And I tell you, to see post-it notes used well makes my heart glad. Yeah. So many times, Yeah. So and to have a little vision into the meadow boards, I thought was really interesting. Does anyone else have any questions for Berit or?
There's a question in the chat from Helen.
Helen's asked a great question.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult
Helen.
part of organising a cross-uni project? What do you think, Berit? I think it helped that there's only 8 universities in New Zealand. There's 50 something in Australia, so our size helped.
Yeah, I think it took us a little bit of time to figure out what to make, and to make sure that what we made was going to be good for everyone. It was quite an interesting challenge to try and create something that everybody could use. And I think we got really close to that. We didn't quite make it just because of capacity, so staff capacity, about being able to take this and do something with it in future. But once we talked everything through and really creating an open forum for discussion and using those in-person meetings to discuss, and that all opinions were valid, and that all, just remembering that we're all dealing with different challenges, different contexts, and then still being able to create something that was adaptable. But that formed it, really. It meant that you couldn't create something static. You had to be able to create something that was adaptable for everyone. So it was a challenge, but actually I think that was the thing almost more than anything else that made it what it was, by creating something that was tailored, that was able to be tailored in future by everyone.
Stuart has asked, have you or your team used the template with researchers or departments? And if so, how did that work and what were the results?
Excellent question. I know that everyone's promoting it at their own universities. I think almost all universities have their own version of it. From what let me think back to my Miro board. People are promoting it in workshops. Some people have printed them off and posted them up around different faculties. We promote it. So when we get, inquiries about, open access, as we say, hey, there's this toolkit that you can use, you can print it off. I would really like to push it to supervisors, because in doing some of our stakeholder feedback initially, I was like, a supervisor could print this off as a packet and hand it to a student and say, here, look at this. I can answer questions on this for you, but this is a really good kind of guide to the process. So we've done a lot of promotion, but we haven't had a lot of individual feedback back from people who have been using it. So the feedback that we get when we show it to people is, oh, this is amazing, I'm going to use it. And then, as is very frequent, they disappear off into the ether and you never hear from them again. But when they see it, they're like, oh yeah, I want that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to print it off. So the idea is great. And the initial reception is very positive, but you very rarely get somebody coming back to you and said, hey, I've been using it, it's fantastic. But I think that's quite common in our line of work.
And also apparently Master of Miro, Berit, and Canva. And I've noticed that in your presentation today, actually, and I was looking sideways at that thinking, that's very pretty. I'm stealing that.
Oh.
You won't hear from me again on that, but just to know that. And also Rachel is saying that they promoted on their research hub along with their other OA support content.
Yes. Yep.
Oh. Is anyone, thank you so much, Kiera and Berit, for your feedback and what you've been doing. And I really appreciate the backwards and forwards and getting that organised and getting you guys online to talk about that. Is there anyone else in the group that have open access initiatives that they might want to bring up? And I know I said Aotearoa, but I know there are some Australians involved here as well.
It's Anna here from Unitech. I don't know if it's really open access, but I did just want to I think people already know as well, but I'm just going to put it in the chat, that we do have 5 former ITPs who are now part of Te Pūkenga, but will soon be part of something else, that have got one research repository, which we recently migrated to be hosted by Atmire. So, it wasn't so much, it's obviously open access because it's a repository, but it's a repository. So that was yesterday. But it was definitely a cross institute, even though we were one institute, but a cross business division, soon to be other institutes collaboration. The benefit of that appears to be quite good pricing with Atmire. Remains to be seen if they notice when we become separate institutes again. But yeah, am very keen to know if anyone else wants to have a kind of a maybe an annual kind of Atmire chat. Maybe we could tack it onto this next year as a sort of a breakout for an hour, but yeah, we're kind of new to Atmire and we're keen to just talk to other Atmire users maybe once a year, or perhaps just contact me. I'll put my email in the chat, because we will be having quarterly meetings and you'd be welcome to opt into one of those if you like, and we could forward it to you. The other person that comes along sometimes is Open Poly, that also use Atmire. So I'll just let me know if you do want to come along and meet us. like I say, the 5/6 of us, sometimes Open Poly comes, have these quarterly meetings now. So any AppMy users are welcome.
Thank you
That's
so
my
much,
little
Anna.
promo.
Thank you so much, Anna. And yes, this did come up yesterday, but it does span. Of course, this is the reason we have this OA day, is because IRs and OA have real crossover. I just wanted to mention that Lisa Chisholm has offered to host these days next year. And so there you go, Lisa. There's your first offer of a presentation. Well done. And but also, if even though it may be AppMy, knowing that, please do use the resource of the Institution Repositories community list. Please do.
Okay, thanks.
Because the people on there have been probably doing similar things, or at least know where to look for answers or guidance on how to do that. And you're in a really, really sticky situation, and anything we can do to help.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a great 2 days, so thank you for that.
No, you're welcome. You can actually blame Stuart. He's the one who strong me into doing it. Any other questions or thoughts or things that they've been doing at their institutions? Well, in the absence of that, I think it might be time for us to draw proceedings to an end, and I am going to share a closing karakia to calm our hearts and keep us safe in the there we go. Let's share. Bear with me. To keep us safe on our way. So once again, I'm going to suggest that we mute ourselves, just because shared karakia are a disturbing thing on Zoom. But please join me. Unahia, both kia watia, ai, koe watia. Thank you very much. Have safe travels, and I shall see you all about.
Thank you, Anton. Great sessions. Bye.
Ka kite, ciao, ciao.